One of my favorite self-assigned art assignments is to paint the same subject using different media. And what I get from this is not just practice in using, ink versus paint, opaque versus transparent, drawing versus painting, but also I learn more about my subject and the decisions that I make to get there. Recently, I did this while painting in the redwood forest. So I did an ink wash painting as kind of a warm-up just to see how the composition would lay out. And then I did a gouache painting as my final piece. So the big difference between ink versus gouache paint is that in ink, I used Sumi ink and rice paper. And with ink loaded on your paintbrush, it goes right down on the paper, and that's it. You've made your mark. Rice paper is very thin, and so there's no going back and building up. You're not working a space in the same way that you might using a thicker paper and opaque paints. So with the ink painting, I was really forced to think in bare simplicity. Which shapes am I going to render in straight ink? Where am I going to use a lighter wash? Am I going to add texture, and how am I going to add texture? Do I want to do simple strokes or shapes? Do I want to come back in later with the detail? And because the ink and paper is so immediate, all these decisions were made in the space of 10 minutes. And then after that, I'm done because the paper is filled. So the ink painting took about maybe 10 or 20 minutes to complete. So for my gouache painting, I chose a small 5x7 cold press watercolor paper, pre-cut. And I made a point of using only my gouache paint instead of mixing it with watercolor. So it's all just that matte, opaque, water-based paint. And the benefits of using that for me are that I can use it in a both transparent wash style and also build up almost like an impasto style. So I can build up opaque layers on top of transparency. I can do an underpainting and have multiple layers at work. So the gouache painting took me around an hour to complete. And while I'll admit that some of that time was spent stepping back and looking at it, it was a very different process than doing my ink painting, even though I was looking at the same subject. So what I did with my gouache painting is I did an underpainting of very light, transparent indications of what the colors would be in the different sections of the page. And then I built up from there, layering the colors that I was mixing to match the colors that I was seeing, but also to tell a story about the depth and the quality of light that I was experiencing in the forest. And it was very interesting to work this way after having done a relatively fast and more simple painting with much more of the plain paper showing through, where I was really conserving my brush strokes to tell the story that way, to building up to add complexity. And I think that it is a worthy exercise to do this, not just to to have lots of mixed media that you can use, different moods, different day, but also to use them in close succession to exercise all of your art brain, and to think of all the different ways and that you can depict a scene or a subject or elicit a feeling. Can the two very, very different media evoke a similar sense of place? So your unofficial art assignment, if you choose to accept it, is to decide on a subject matter and to use two very different media to describe it, and report back. Let me know how it goes. Did you find one that you really took to more than the other? Is one approach easier for you? And what did you get out of doing this assignment? I'd love to hear your comments about this. And if you'd like to, of course, please share a link with your work. I'd love to see what you do as well.